If we can get you to sign in, then we can support better food at the next meeting. Yeah. You like are all eating, so you're like, what? So please sign in. And with that, I'll introduce you to Alex Kramer. He's the Director of Strong Workforce here on campus. Alex?
Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. Let me try that again, because I didn't hear enough energy. How's everyone doing? Woo! Good, good, good. So thank you all for being here tonight. Again, my name is Alex Kramer. I'm the Director of Workforce Development here. That means that I have a really cool job. I get to bring some really cool employers here to campus to help us build better curriculum that actually helps you succeed because you're learning up-to-date skills. And then also, we connect with employers for internship and employment opportunities for all of you once you're getting ready to graduate. So I feel really grateful to be in this role and to serve all of you. Okay, with that said, tonight we have an awesome panel, and I get the honor of actually introducing your moderator and our two panelists tonight. Does that sound all right? Yeah. Okay, good. So let's get started. I'm going to start with our moderator tonight, Robert Shoffner. So Robert is the director of the San Mateo Small Business Development Center. It's actually housed at CSM, just up the street from us, if you will, about 10 minutes away. Robert is an Adjunct Professor of Management at Golden Gate University and also at CSM. The SBDC, for those of you that do not know, actually partnered with us tonight to help us get connected with some of these panelists. They also have a resource table in the back. So quick show of hands. Who's interested in possibly starting a business, let's say in the next decade? Cool. All right, great. So you need to go talk to Edgar back there. When you're done, Edgar, can you wave your hand? Thank you. So Edgar can get you connected with some really great resources to help you start, find some funding, and get going. Robert, so let me get back to Robert. So the SBDC provides free one-on-one business counseling services to folks that are looking to start a business. Also, if you're in business and you need help, you can go to the Small Business Development Center and get some assistance. It's funded through the Small Business Administration, so it's his government funds. This is our tax dollars going to support small business ownership in the state. So Robert's been an instructor at Golden Gate University since 2014, where he provides instruction in subjects including management, strategy, and management communications. He's also the program manager of the Chevron Small Business and Entrepreneurship program at Golden Gate University. So can we get a quick round of applause for Robert? This is Robert. So our next panelist is Senna Zorlu. Senna has a really cool company I think you guys will be excited to hear about. So Senna has a global footprint of building companies from the ground up in America, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. In 2015, Senna co-founded, I'm going to say this wrong, Instapio? Okay, I said it right. A data management platform focusing on smart devices and Internet of Things, which brought her to the Bay Area. Her areas of focus are big data and consumer behavior. She has her bachelor's degree from Brown University in Development Economics and an executive MBA from, how do I say this? Coach University, thank you. Sorry, I didn't read that in advance. In coordination with Peking University in China. So please, round of applause for CEO of Instapio, Senna Zorlu. And our final panelist for the night. I had her bio right here. I want to make sure that I do this justice. Hang on just a moment. There we go. Our final panelist for the night is Dr. Mayasari Lim. Maya is the founder and CEO of SE3D. It's a 3D bioprinting company. This is really, really interesting stuff. So SE3D is a startup focused on next-generation 3D bioprinters and its applications in research and education. SE3D is a National Science Foundation-funded company and received over $1 million in federal funding for its innovation spearheaded by Dr. Lim. Previously, Dr. Lim was a professor in bioengineering at Nanyang Technological University, a top engineering university in Singapore. Her research expertise included stem cell engineering, bioprocess design, bioprinting, and tissue engineering. Dr. Lim is an active woman entrepreneur among the Indonesian professionals and women engineering community in the Bay Area. That was a mouthful. She's also currently teaching at the Fung Institute for Engineering Leadership in UC Berkeley. Dr. Lim obtained her PhD in chemical engineering at Imperial College London and her BS in chemical engineering at UC Berkeley. So please, for our final panelist, round of applause for Dr. Maya Lim. Okay, and we will pass it off to Robert to kick us off. And let me hand these over.
Hey, good evening. You guys, I think it's a little bit dangerous sometimes to give food. Because generally my experience is if I'm teaching right after lunchtime, sometimes eyes get heavy and people start to sleep. But I'm hoping that's not the case because we've got a really exciting panel this evening. Some of you said you're thinking about being an entrepreneur. Well, let me just give you a statistic. 80% of you will be an entrepreneur at some point in your life. So you're going to do something entrepreneurial. And entrepreneurism is just simply identifying a problem, coming up with a solution, and seeing if you can make money doing it. So that's the business model. You have a business model that makes money. So I'll just give you a quick one of how many of you have ever seen a 1-800-GOT-JUNK truck? All right. So this guy saw a problem. The problem he saw was that people got a lot of junk. They don't know what to do with it. So he decided to start a business, 1-800-GOT-JUNK. How much did he start the business for? $700. Bought a truck. 5 years later, he had a $100 million business. 5 years later. And the story goes on from there. So I just say that to say that all of you can come up with an idea. If you see a problem, come up with your solution, figure out if you can make money at it. That's entrepreneurism in a nutshell. But so STEM has an application to entrepreneurism too. And both of our panelists are experienced in this field. I know you have some interest in it, so I'm going to ask a few quick questions just to get started. And Senna, if you would just give your name, where you're from, college, did community college play any role in your academic background? And if you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
Hi, hello everyone. So my name is Senna. I'm originally from Turkey. I came to the US in 2000 to go to Brown University, and then I lived here until 2008. And I lived in a couple of different countries. I lived in Belgium for a while, Turkey for a bit, and China for a bit. And then I moved back to the US in 2015 to California. So I've been around a lot of places. Good packer, fast packer, quick mover. I went to college in, as I said, in Brown University. It was my dream college to go to, and I was the first one in my city to go to Brown, so I was really happy getting in. I haven't had any experience in community college. I thought when I first started I was probably going to do like master's, PhD and everything. I soon figured out it's not my thing, so I didn't have a really long academic career. But I did an MBA, and instead of doing it in the US, I wanted to learn a little bit about the world, so I found this Turkish university that had a program with a Chinese university called Peking University. And I thought half my time there, half my time in China. I got to learn China, not Chinese. But it was an amazing experience for me to do study abroad and learn that. If I had a superpower, it would probably be something boring like freezing time or something, because that's never enough. So sorry, that's a bit boring, but that's what I would need.
Thank you. Dr. Lim, same questions.
Yeah, so I am, I'm Indonesian, as probably some of you have guessed from my profile. I did most of my years, like my early years in Singapore, so I have a very strong connection and ties with Singapore, but when I first moved to the US, I actually went to a community college. I went to Santa Monica Community College, and I think that was one of the best decisions from a couple of perspectives. One, really got me into the ground as far as trying to figure out what I want to do and where I want to go. Saved a lot of money, for sure. So I think that was a very smart decision. And that also opened a lot of doors for me because I applied for several universities and I got multiple offers. So when UC Berkeley came through, for me, it was down to UC Berkeley and Carnegie Mellon. So an obvious choice, I think, because of the weather. Berkeley. And my sister said, well, there are more cows in Carnegie Mellon than there are humans, so do you really want to go there? Anyway, it was just a joke. But anyway, that was my story. And I think that for me, I really enjoyed college. Berkeley was a very diverse university. It was a little scary in the beginning because it was, back then when I went to school, Berkeley is still a little dodgy, a lot of homeless people and so forth. So it was kind of scary at first, but once you get to know the people there, it's a very diverse kind of culture. You feel really open, and it's just great to be in that kind of environment that you don't feel judged and so forth. So I really enjoyed my years in college. And like Senna, I actually traveled quite a bit and moved to different countries. So after Berkeley, I worked here a couple years, and then I went to Imperial College for my PhD in London. So I stayed in London for about 5 years, which is also a very different culture. And then I moved back to Singapore again because my family is there. And then now I'm back here again. So I basically circled the country almost twice. And I love being in California for many reasons. And I think one part of it was also definitely, I feel there's a lot more opportunities here, especially as an entrepreneur. And I think that was also a great opportunity for me to start my business and getting a lot of support and funding from the federal government as well. So that was really fortunate for us as a company. If I had a superpower, I think I would like to be able to teleport anywhere in the world. Like Senna, I think time is such a precious thing. I hate traveling 18 hours or 24 hours to Singapore or to the other side of the country. And I just wish to be closer to my family, to my mom, because she's so far away from me.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. You've had a lot of education. How did you stay connected? That's a long time, a lot of time you spend on education.
It is. So when I graduated from UC Berkeley, I never thought about going back to school. The first thing I wanted to do was, I just want to get out there and get a job. And I did that, right? I got a pretty good job as a process engineer, loved the people that I worked with, but I think the main thing for me was I felt that, at least when I was working at the company, which was Novella Systems, which is now part of Lam Research, a lot of the managers that I worked for, they had a PhD, and they were very intelligent, because it's such a tech-focused company. So a lot of these people, my managers, most of them had a PhD, and especially my direct manager, he was just such an inspiring, mentor and individual that really inspired me to go out there and do something else. And also, I think for me at that time was sort of an opportunity for me to transition to a different career, because I didn't really want to do semiconductors, and I wanted to do something that was more biomedical, bioscience research related, so that was a good opportunity for me to transition.
Now we're in the middle of Silicon Valley, so everyone's heard probably about elevator pitches, and that you've got to have that ready to go, elevator ride, not on the Kenyatta College or CSM's elevators, because they are definitely not express elevators. You might have a little bit more time to pitch, but 30 seconds to a minute pitch to tell someone about your business, and hopefully that they get interested in it. So I'm going to start with you. What's your elevator pitch for your business? Tell us about your business.
Sure. So we at Instapio, we're working on a data management platform for all connected devices. So when you look at the digital world, the web, we have cookies. So cookies connect everything. So you click on something, you see the ad on the next page, your settings follow you. But in the real world, we don't have that. So we're building this data management platform, so every device that we use in the room or our cell phones and everything, they have a similar protocol like cookies, so that everything can be smarter and more personalized for you.
And your elevator pitch.
So, so first of all, let me explain what bioprinting is, because some of you may not be familiar with this concept. So most of us are familiar with 3D printers. Bioprinting allows you to place individual cells and materials that support life, basically, so that you could build tissues and organs in the future, right? So pretty mind-blowing stuff, which I think the technology is so powerful that initially when I got into this space, I thought I need to make this more accessible to my students because I was a faculty then. And my goal was to make this technology accessible to more students so that every student who are inclined to learn more about life sciences and biology will have this tool and be able to maximize the potential of bioprinting technology. And that's sort of my vision and goal building this company.
Thank you. Follow-up question for you. When did you first think STEM was cool?
So I think when I was in school, I don't think STEM was ever a word. That was quite a few years ago, though people might be deceived if they think how old I am. But yeah, I don't think STEM was really a word back then. But I did really like math, and I figured that I should go into engineering and maybe not pure sciences, because I like to solve problems. So that's what engineers do. We solve problems. And I didn't really, I don't know, I don't think that was something that was cool, but it's just something that I was driven because I was passionate about the science, and I think that was just really awesome that you could do things with it. So I think that just sort of led me to go towards that path. Yeah.
As a woman, did you have teachers that encouraged you and said, geez, go for it in science and technology and those type of subjects?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my first experience that really changed me was when I was in high school. That I had a great math teacher, and she was very good. She helped me really understand concepts that helped me to build a lot of confidence in mathematics. And I think that really helped a lot as far as making me feel confident and not worry that I'm a woman and women can be good at math too. So she was also a female math teacher, and I think she was sort of my first inspiration in building confidence in being good in something that is not traditionally something that women would pursue. So yeah, so I think that was my first experience. But definitely at UC Berkeley, we have a lot of great mentors and who are professors who are very much providing a lot of guidance and also encouraging us to explore different ideas and so forth. So I think they definitely supported as far as providing us with a lot of inspiration.
So same question for you. When did science and math and technology and things start to interest you and you thought it was cool?
So for me, in all the career tests they made us do in high school, it always said you have to be an engineer. And my grandfather, who actually paid for my college and everything, he was always like, you have to be an engineer. You're going to be an industrial engineer. You'll come work for me, build stuff for me. So I was like, I'm never going to study engineering. So it was like out of the question. But I like quantitative things, so I was like, okay, I'll just go study math. And then I was like, okay, what do I do with math? So I ended up doing economics. I thought that was like the real world version of what I can do with math. But somehow engineering always followed me, particularly in software, where in my first two companies I was a user of technology, so that my company does things better. And that's when I fell in love with it, where a lot of technology, a lot of software that you see today is just the version so that businesses don't use Excel anymore. Like everything in business depended on Excel like 10, 15 years ago. Even today, a lot of small businesses still depend on Excel. So for me, it was a lot of, I had our first software got done, and then I hired a couple of engineers in the company, software engineers, to start building things so that other people could use the software that we use, and that's how I started getting into the startup world. It was first building for myself and then just scaling that. But for me, it's like there's so much we can do as humans. So I love how technology accelerates that, and I love how technology can expand into so many countries and make everything more equal, more accessible to everybody so that they can build more. So for me, it was more of a user of things. And then I became a creator of things in the past 12 years.
Thank you. Anyone out in the audience at some point in your academics ever been intimidated a little bit by STEM subjects? We really have to do a better job in earlier education. My follow-up question is, how did you overcome that intimidation? You know, as you started pursuing and doing more and more and these type of subjects. Any tricks that you can relate to the audience?
Well, for me, to be honest, I was really good at a subject, or I sucked at a subject. And still to this day, like a lot of tasks, either they're like, it's very easy for me to get, like, math was amazing for me. English is my second language. I started learning it when I was 13. It was very easy for me. But then, like, biology, I never got it. And it was, for me, when I don't get things, I have to memorize. And I hate sitting down and memorizing things. I was always the person who took a lot of notes in class, and then I wouldn't have to study again. So for me, the biggest problem was I had to learn it to enjoy it. Like, I had to understand why, like, a frog is so important and why we have to dice it, and things like that. So for me, STEM was always more complicated than how it was for every other student. Like, everybody else just memorized some stuff and passed the test. I had to like it. I had to understand it. So I read a lot, and we didn't have a lot of videos as you guys have access to right now on YouTube and all of these channels. So I think that would be really fun, but I used to read, like, encyclopedias and other books and try to enjoy it. For me, that was a trick.
Same question.
Yeah, I think for me, I resonate a lot with Senna because I suck in biology. So, like, right after high school, I think I dropped out. Like, I took 1 year of high school well, in Singapore it's 2 or 3 years of high school biology, and then the last year you get to choose whether you want to take the final exam. I said, no, this is not for me. So I hate memorizing things as well, which is why I just can't do well in biology, no matter how hard I work at it. And I thought, you know, I'm better at just figuring stuff out. Give me the equation, I'll figure it out. And when I went to UC Berkeley, what I was really relieved about was it's all open book, and I'm like, great! I don't ever have to memorize anything, right? Most of our exams are open book, but it's actually bad news because it actually becomes really challenging problems that is really complex. And I remember there are some physical chemistry problems that we had to, whether it's quantum mechanics, right? And I'm like, what the hell is this, jumping particle thing? I just had no idea. And all you could do is just figure out the best as you can, right? Whatever resources, whatever you learn, and say, okay, I think this is what's happening, but, can't really figure out what really it is. So I think I guess at some point you do feel intimidated because, especially when you're not strong at certain areas, you just feel really like overwhelmed, right? And you might worry that, okay, it might affect your grades and so forth. But I think for us, when we were at Berkeley, one thing we realized that everybody is smart, everybody is hardworking, but, I think it's not about competing against each other. So we worked together a lot when we were at college with my classmates. So we try to figure things out together, and we help each other out a lot. And I think that really helped. That helped with building confidence with each other. And even for those who've already kind of figured out the problems, when you're teaching somebody else, you're also learning at the same time, right? So I think when you build, a network of friends or peers that you could work with and help each other out, that builds confidence across the board. So that could be one way of overcoming sort of intimidation and fear for a certain subject area that you don't feel really confident about. So.
Thank you. So I just heard a really great tip, and that is to rely upon your classmates and to work in teams. Now, if you're going to go into business, you're going to be an entrepreneur. You are going to find, whether it's entrepreneur endeavor or working for someone else, work is accomplished in teams. Very rarely now do you see someone that's just the individual contributor, sort of works by themselves over in a corner and doesn't talk to anybody. No, there's a lot of collaboration and whatever. So, you know, reach out to someone, even if you're a little bit shy and whatever, reach out to someone may be having the same exact problem, and you can collaborate together. The other thing is, I'll just put in a plug for Kenyatta. There's great professors here, and professors love to hear from you. So if you've got, geez, I don't understand this, I'm not quite sure, whatever, go knock on their door. They do have office hours, and they'll be happy to try to explain it to you. So take advantage of that. So you had this amazing academic career, and all of a sudden you decide, I want to start a business. So what inspired you to start your business?
So when I moved back to the Bay Area, I was trying to figure out how I wanted to transition my career, because I was in Singapore for 5 years being in academia. It's tough being an academic, because you have to publish a lot, you have to get grant funding, there's a lot of pressure, and then on top of it, you have to teach really well as well. So there was a lot of pressure being an academic, and when I had this opportunity to sort of move back to the Bay Area, I thought, do I really want to go back to being an academic? And one of my colleagues actually told me, well, you could get funding and still start your own lab, but not be an academic. And I couldn't figure out what he was saying at first. I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? And then later I did some reading and research and found out, oh, there's these SBIR grants, that support small businesses to do innovative stuff. I'm like, I think that's what he's talking about.
What's SBIR?
The Small Business Innovation Research Grant from the National Science Foundation. Yeah. So those are very specific research-focused technology grants that you could get funding from, and it supports small businesses, right? So I thought, well, this is a great opportunity, and I said, why not, right? And I had a colleague who was in Santa Clara University, and kind of brainstormed with him, and I said, why don't we just submit a proposal and see if we will get some funding to start this project? Because he was equally excited about the project and an opportunity, so we kind of just, got things going, and 6 months later, we got the money, so that was great.
Same question.
So for me, it was, I joined our team a bit 6 months after they started building the product. It was an all-engineering team, all boys, and they were building this technology. They got $150,000 in funding with 5 slides. I think I've never heard of anything like this, but they had amazing experience, and they built 5 slides. They're like, we want to fix this in the world. This is the problem. It's worth this much if we can do it. This is like where we used to work. Like, this is how much money we need. It was like insane. So they got $150K with 5 slides. They quit their jobs, and they rented this apartment. It was like 4 guys in an apartment. Not fun. And it was, they couldn't turn it into a business. It was becoming an okay product for them. They loved their product. And I used to have a consulting company at the time, a financing consulting company, and I knew them. They said, can you turn this into a business? And I was like, I can, but you have to let me. Which is something that took about 6 months before I joined in. They had to let go. They had to, give me the leash so I could manage everything. And then I said, I want to do this from scratch. Are you okay with this? And they said, sure. So that was like 1 year down the drain. So they said, okay, we built everything from scratch. And for me, the inspiration was how quickly they built things and their vision. Although their vision was wrong in terms of what a business should be, it was amazing in terms of technology. So they let me do my thing, and it became a good power of technology and business together. So that was inspiring for me.
So you heard another great tip there. A lot of entrepreneurs fall in love with their technology. They love their technology, and no one can touch it. No, don't mess with my technology. Don't do this, don't do that. And they're bleeding money. They're not making any money. It's not going to turn into a business. And so, talked about teamwork, talked about collaboration. You have to have people that have a vision of, how is this going to be commercially successful? What's that business model? How's this going to make money? How's it going to be a viable business? And so they recognize, fortunately, they recognize we need another type of talent in our business. So they brought in her that could help them move to the next level. Now, for both of you, when did you start your business? And as you're thinking back on that, is there anything different that's going on today that would have you rethink it, or that you should be concerned about today if you're thinking about starting a business versus when you first got involved?
I think I should have taken more classes from SBDC on entrepreneurship before I started my business, because we started with, I didn't do an MBA. I have no idea what entrepreneurship is about. I don't know what accounting is. I had to learn everything from scratch. So I wish I took some classes on that and really helped me to the framework and all of that, to at least get that started off in the right foot. So I think that was what I hoped I have done better.
So we started in 2015. And because we deal with hardware, probably very much like you, we had about the first 2 years of mostly testing the system. So we were lucky because we had 2 actual customers that we could use for testing, so we were like out of the lab. But in terms of challenges and changes and everything, because we're dealing with data, a lot of our changes have been through regulations. So legal has always been sort of like a team member to us, although we have outside counsel. It's been very challenging to understand what's happening globally. You have different data rules across different countries, different regions. So sometimes you say, like, I just don't want to deal with this region, this country, or sometimes it's like, okay, how do we pivot the product so that it fits these regulations? So that's been the constant challenge that's out of our control.
So all of us are in a world where the only constant that we face in our lives is change. What we'll look at tomorrow is not the same thing we looked at today. And so what I heard you say about your business is that you actually did a pivot. Yes. A little bit. And so that pivot is where you're going this direction, and you realize you have to go in another direction. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So pivots, I would say, are, you can have 3 types of pivots, I think. One is the way we did, which is it's not in your control what's happening in your market. There's outside regulations or things that are happening in your market that you have to adjust to. There are internal pivots where I've seen a lot of companies, for instance, you built, for instance, Slack. I don't know if have you heard of Slack? So Slack is like a messaging tool between colleagues. So instead of everybody emailing each other and you have this email thread of like 500 emails going back and forth, it's like a safe chat module that companies use. So it's a multi-billion-dollar company, and it used to be a communication protocol inside a game. And nobody liked the game. It was a horrible game. But it was apparently an amazing chatbot that he later turned it into like an enterprise game. So there are pivots sometimes where your vision is so completely wrong, but luckily enough, there's another market that's willing to pick up what you've already built off. So that also happens. And third is sometimes you build something and really nobody wants it, but you have a team of people and you like each other and you work well. So you sit and you're like, okay, what can we do together? So that's the worst kind of pivot. But it's also hopeful because you have a team. There are people who don't even have a team or an idea. So it really depends, but I think for any business, sometimes you can't avoid change. And as we were just talking about, for some people it's very difficult to jump the path and say, this needs to change. It's very comfortable to keep on doing what you're doing every day. So change is difficult, change requires some courage, but then it's very important.
Any pivots for you in your business, or any unexpected challenges that caused you to rethink what you were doing?
There are definitely a lot of challenges that we face constantly, I think. And there are many times throughout I guess our life cycle the past 2-3 years that we've discussed so many possibilities as far as pivoting. But I think that making a pivot is difficult for many reasons, because there's still so many unknowns into this new area or new territory that you go into. There's no guarantee that you're going to be successful, and then you got to build a whole new, depending on how much you're pivoting, you may have to build new resources and so forth. So I think that has been sort of the most challenging part for us as far as making a really drastic pivot. So, but I think we do have a product that people do want. It's just a matter of getting, more visibility with, the customers that we're targeting. And then also on the customer side, they have their own challenges as far as funding and so forth. So that has always been our challenge. That is not something that anyone can really solve. So I think it just takes time to sort of develop some of these things.
So we've got math, we've got engineering, we've got tech, we've got science, all these skills you're learning in school. When do you use those skills in your business? How often do you use those skills?
So math is important, I think, just, like the most basic stuff. Like a lot of things that we do in life, we use a lot of math. I think maybe not so obviously, but it's just intuitively, there's a lot of definitely math involved. Things that are really more deeper kind of math, like calculus and so forth, we don't really use it on a daily basis. But for me, because I had to teach, so I actually had to go back and teach calculus for a while, so that's a different story. But I think math was probably one of the most important skills. I think now with computer science and so forth, programming is also useful, because I end up, building my own website and, trying to figure out some platform and so forth. So some programming skills, or at least understanding some framework, would help navigate those things. And also, I think being an entrepreneur, at some levels, you have to be, I think, a jack of all trades at some level, because you need to be what they call a generalist, where you need to know quite a lot of things in multiple fields to be able to sort of lead different departments or different divisions in your company to say, okay, this is the right direction that you're going. So you almost have to know quite a bit as far as skill sets and diversity. So yeah.
For you?
I would say mostly same. I haven't used calculus since college, but I think it gives you a way to solve problems. You look at something and then you see different solutions. Or I don't know, like I've learned public speaking doing Model UN in high school and college. So it's not always necessarily like that academic skill specifically, but it leads to something that's bigger, and it makes you more versatile in a lot of aspects.
So you heard about my academic background, but prior to that, I was a banker for many years, and I used to hire hundreds of people. And so my question for both of you is, as you encounter problems, what type of critical thought process do you go through to solve those problems, to take a look at the problems? Is there anything you particularly do that helps you understand what you're looking at before you come up with a solution? So I'll ask you first.
So I try to do two things. One is I try to look like a democratic leader, so I listen to people. But sometimes too much democracy in a small business, it creates a lot of chaos. But I try to give an assembly for people to voice their opinion in a very comfortable setting. So the moment people are in a feedback-giving way, I want to make sure that it's never going to be used against them. So that's one thing that I do. But then I'm the sole person who makes the decisions, and then any investor or any customer, whoever it may be, I'm the only person that faces the consequences of those decisions. But it's mostly about whiteboarding a lot of stuff, trying to see it from not only my perspective, but from others' perspective, and sometimes asking, where if I can't figure out something, I try to ask and try to get open feedback for myself.
Yeah, I think I agree with Senna in many ways that, I think a lot of the problems today is also very complex, that not one person can solve these problems a lot of times, so it's always good to work in a team. And for me, in my company, I also always encourage my team members to work with each other, to support each other. So I think collaboration is a key aspect in making any successful business. As far as problem solving specifically, we as engineers, I guess we tend to be a little bit more systematic. We think systematically, so we think, okay, brainstorming, and then you select the process, and so there's always sort of like a systematic process, right? And then you go through prototyping, iteration, and so forth. So there's always like a systematic approach that we try to do that. But sometimes, like my engineer, for example, just a couple days ago, I think he made a design error, right? Which was an oversight on his part, in my opinion, because when I looked at the design, I said, this will not fly. I mean, how did you even think about that? I didn't want to give him a hard time about it. I said, look, take it as a lesson, right? You need to think things through, right? You learn from experiences, and as you get better and better, and this is why your seniority becomes important, because over the years, you got to learn from your mistakes. You can't go back and make the same mistake again. That will not be a good thing. So I said you have to figure out how to have processes in place for yourself, so that you know to avoid mistakes, to foresee problems. That's where the experience come in.
Thank you. So one of the things that you're going to be hired for, if you go to work for someone, is your ability to think. Can you think through the problem put in front of you? And so that's really something critical to develop, what your thought process is. What was your most interesting or impactful class in college?
So for me, it was actually world music cultures, which I took as a fun class. It was one of the hardest classes I ever took, because it was like music theory plus composition plus all this memorization, and it was like, for me, it was like, I go there once a week, I listen to some African drums, it's gonna be cool, and it was so difficult, and it made me learn to appreciate if you're going into a new field, it's not just fun, whatever it may be.
For me, I think the two classes I really enjoyed at college, one was technical communication, because the professor was amazing, and he really taught us really good tips, techniques on how to write well, speak well, and so forth. So that was really helpful for us and for me personally. And the other one that I really enjoyed was the our senior capstone project, so to speak. Well, it's in chemical engineering, where basically we're just designing a chemical plant. That's what our senior project is about. But I think that was the fun part, because that class really allowed us to apply all the knowledge that we had, like everything we learned for the last 2 years in chemical engineering, we were able to apply it in that class, energy balances, chemical balances, and so forth, mass balances and everything. And we worked as a team. Everybody had like different parts that they were supposed to focus on, and that allowed us, a small team of 4 people to work together. So that was, to me, was the most enjoyable class.
Thank you. So next one's a 3-part question, but you've got a lot of students here in the audience, and they're thinking about their education, but they're also thinking about what type of job opportunities are going to be available upon graduating. So what are you trying to accomplish with your business? Where do you see your business going? And can some of these students be a fit in your business? If so, what type of skills are you looking for? Who wants to go first?
Sure, yeah, I can go. Okay, sure, I can go first. So I think for me, for our business, I was just having a conversation with my team just a couple hours ago. I think for the longest time, people have always seen us as almost a social enterprise. But I don't, just because we're focused on education doesn't always necessarily mean that you are a social enterprise. But I think because people see us as a social enterprise, I feel like this is the time where we really need to figure out what is that social impact we really want to achieve. And we're really I'm excited with my team to talk more about what is the social impact that we really want to bring in to this space and to the community. So that's one thing that, as far as where the business is going, we want to really bring impact, but also still be a profitable company, and I think that's possible to do. And as far as skill sets, for small companies, I think the biggest thing for me is finding someone who is also very entrepreneurial. Somebody who could multitask, who could be very versatile, who could be very resourceful, able to be independent and solve problems for us. That's really hard. And I have good engineers, but they're not necessarily the most versatile people, right? So I think finding somebody with great versatility, with solid background knowledge will be really helpful. Marketing and business development is always tough because not everyone that we bring on board understands the education space. So that's always been our biggest challenge, is to find a good business development person, manager, and so forth to help us grow the business. So that has been sort of some of the things we've been looking for. But I think in general, for interns or even students who just come out of college who are looking for opportunities, I do look for people who are more resourceful, more self-driven, right? I don't like to micromanage my team members. I like people who are independent and who are proactive. So those are kind of the skill sets that I tend to look for.
As far as we're concerned, we're expanding into how we can create different use cases of our data. So the roles that we're looking for are mostly like application engineers and business analysts. So on that front, we do hire new graduates, we do hire interns, but it's mostly on our technical side that we hire, and the thing that we look most for is curiosity. Where I think in Bay Area, if you can make it for a couple of months after college, you'll get a job. There are, I think, more jobs than there are people in Bay Area right now, particularly in technology side. So if you can build the right skills of entry-level positions, I think within 3 to 6 months, a lot of people can find a job. That's not the problem right now. But for a lot of startups, we're competing with companies like Google and Facebook and all of these giant companies for talent. And it's usually not a situation where money can solve a problem. Like if Google gives 200K to someone, if I can give 220K, nobody's coming to my company for 20K. So there's a lot of competition, particularly on the employer side. So I think for a lot of younger people, if you can go into a company, as you said, be versatile and look at everything. What can I do for this company? How can I jump? Because we're all looking to grow our businesses and we're all lacking in skills and people. So trying to see above what is your job description. Like what is this company's vision? How can they get there? If you're looking to more commercialize your business, you're in engineering, well, can I do something to help that? Those are very critical. And I think also retention is a big problem in Bay Area, where a lot of people in a job, they tend to leave within 1 year or sooner. So people who are loyal and really they love their job, that's super important for a company. So to show that, I think will make yourself very valuable, even as an intern.
Thank you. So you've heard a couple of things here. For STEM type companies, you're going to need good math skills. Not necessarily that you're going to use calculus every day, but you need to understand it, understand what the theory is behind it, because you're going to need good math skills. Probably if you're being hired for something specific, you're going to need that specific engineering skills, coding skills, a specific science skill. But what companies really, really are looking for is also really good soft skills. So, do you have curiosity? Do you have creativity? Can you see something from multiple different angles? Are you willing to do a little bit more than the person right next to you? So sometimes, you may say, well, geez, I got hired to do this, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything extra. But you ever raise your hand and say, yeah, I'll take that on. I'll do that, I'll do that. One, it's one way to get recognized, but two, it's really important because what did I say before? You're in a teamwork environment, and everybody comes together to make the team successful. So don't neglect those soft skills. They're very, very important. Creativity, curiosity, innovation are all skills that employers are looking for right now. So my final question before we open it up to the audience is, if you could travel back in time, if you could teleport, what would you tell yourself to study and prep for where you are today?
So I think I'm very curious about human psychology, so I probably would love to go back and learn more about that and learn more about human behavior, studying human behavior and so forth, and be a better, negotiator and so forth. So I think that would be one class that I would take. And entrepreneurship for sure. I wish I knew it. I wish I knew about that earlier. So yeah, those are the two classes that I will probably go back and do.
I'd probably study engineering. Make my grandfather proud. He's right. I think that would be it.
All right, well, thank you both for very informative comments. And at this point in time, I'd love to open it up to the audience for students. If you've got questions, please feel free, just raise your hand.
Thank you. Okay, so I love the fact, so I wasn't aware of who the speakers were going to be. I just knew that it was an entrepreneurship panel, but I love the speakers. You're awesome. And I think it's really interesting because recently I was talking to an engineering professor who did his undergraduate in bioengineering, and he was actually telling me that for bioengineers who want to go into like medical instrument design, it's really hard to get a job because bioengineering is fairly new, and so these companies that design medical instruments don't know what a bioengineer can do, but they know what a mechanical engineer can do, and they prefer someone who's a little less ambiguous. So if you could give a little bit about that.
So I think that's very true because a lot of medical device companies, they hire mechanical engineers to do the design work, and they're still not, so comfortable or familiar with how a bioengineer fits in. So one way to be competitive is for sure, if you're interested in design, the CAD is super important for sure, right? That's one. The other leg up, I think, is the regulatory aspects of where you would shine compared to just a pure mechanical engineer. Because as a bioengineer, if you're able to understand what the legal pathways are, FDA, medical device and so forth, that's where you get a leg up. So I would highly recommend taking classes, regulatory pathways, medical devices, clinical trials and so forth. Those would be the ones that will help you, get a leg up. And especially if you can get an internship around those as well, I think that will also really make you different and compared to a traditional mechanical engineer. Yeah.
Other questions?
For either of you, so for like the business side of things, I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but how do you deal with a really like cutthroat competitive culture?
I think it's more of a psychology question than business. I think there's a lot of noise, and we're in a culture where, because we need to discover things digitally, there has to be a lot of noise. It's just like the way the Google, Facebook algorithms work is the more you shout, the more you'll be on people's feeds. So there's a lot of random information out there. So I think a lot of it is you look at it to be informed and to see what's happening, but to learn to cut through what is, I don't want to use a bad word, but lies and like exaggerated context. Because there's a lot of information out there, there's a lot of competition for funding and everything. I think it's human condition that people start lying and exaggerating things. So you can decide to be part of that culture, or you can have your ethical stance and say, this is my boundaries and this is what I'm communicating. So sometimes, unfortunately, it's very difficult to see, but there are some companies that are in your field, you know their practices well, you know they're lying or whatever, and then they get like the news clips or they get the funding. But it's, I think one thing to understand is being in the news, being online, or getting the funding is not necessarily a tribute to success. There are a lot of factors. So I think the way to deal with it is focus. Learn from it, feed from it, but never forget to focus on what you're doing.
So for us, you know, with the bioprinting space, we're still a pretty small community, so to speak. So I actually do know all of my competitors, and we, you know, the guy pinged me on LinkedIn. Oh, I love what you're doing, so, right? He's my competitor, but you know, it's great. It's a small community, so we're not necessarily as cutthroat, so to speak, right? As maybe some of the industries that are a little bit more mature. But on that note, I would say that, you know, just because somebody else is doing something that is unethical or borderline or lying doesn't mean that you should, all right? I don't think you should compromise your standards. I do believe in karma, and I do believe that if you lie, it's gonna bite you back. So a great example is Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos, right? I think that she crossed the line, and that's what happened. So I don't think that you should, you know, and she could have started with a small lie and it just kind of roll to become a bigger and bigger lie. And I don't think you should compromise your standards or your ethicals or your ethics. Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, the quote-unquote female Steve Jobs.
Can you just give a brief
blood? She came out with a device that was going to test blood and perform a number of blood tests, and ultimately it was all smoke and mirrors. But she got $750 million in funding from investors. She was the youngest female billionaire at the time, and this was all just completely all smoke and mirrors. So the only thing I would add on is ethics is never black and white, it's always gray. But don't compromise your standards for short-term gain. Think long-term. And I really do agree with Dr. Lim, you know, karma. Short-term gain, youngest female billionaire, $750 million in investor funding, everything looks rosy, and a few years later, it's all a house of cards that fell apart. So, you know, think in the long term, but also recognize that if you're going to be in business, whatever business you're in, business is tough. It's not for the faint of heart, and so you got to be prepared for that.
We have one question here, we'll go here and then to you. Is that okay?
First, thank you both for coming up, and thank you for being in the middle. So the question is for Dr. Lin is 3D bioprinting technology and designs and the educational goals. Which direction do you see it going? And I have two. You can pick the other one or tell me if I'm wrong. Is one, create organ tissues for personalized medicine, such as organ transplant? Or do you see artificial organs that can be used in the bench for drug discovery? What is the ultimate goal of your educational goals or your designing when you work with your clients?
Yeah, so for us, you know, our goal is more targeted for education in the sense that we are looking at sort of harnessing the human potential of folks who will be the future workforce in the bioprinting industry, right? So that's sort of our focus, is that we're actually incubating these talents for the future workforce, because we do believe that bioprinting is going to be a huge industry, right? Whether it's for sort of the bioprinted models for drug discovery, right? So that's already happening, and a lot of pharmaceutical companies are starting to look at using bioprinting tools to adopt into better models that could replace animal studies and so forth. So that's already happening today. And the second piece, which is the organ transplant, right? There are several companies who are already working on different aspects of the technology wherever we have a bottleneck, so to speak, that a fully functional organ is going to be still a challenge, no doubt. But I think the future is there, where there are still so many opportunities to pursue in this area. So Organovo, for example, they have already created liver tissue that is functional for 2 months that could be used for testing for pharmaceutical purposes, for testing drugs, right? And they've already sort of figured out, one part of it, which is a functional organ, functional liver tissue. And for them to take that to the next level, they're close, right? They're getting there. It's pretty close, but obviously there's still FDA approvals and so forth, right? So I think the bioprinting industry, for me, no doubt, it's a huge industry. DoD already invested $80 million to build this ecosystem, which is called ARMI, which is Advanced Regenerative Medicine Institute. And their vision is also to make the US as one of the powerhouses to build tissue for transplants and so forth in the future. So I think that the future is there, and we want to be firstly part of education, because I feel that, to me, it parallels with where 3D printing was maybe 10 years ago, right? Part of the challenge with learning new technology is always the education, the learning part of it. And I think that's where we want to tap into those markets, whether it's high school, college, university, or professionals, that they need to learn about these technology, they need to come up to speed, and we want to be in the pipeline for all of them.
So could you talk about the research opportunities outside of academia? Because I'm interested in doing research. However, I never really considered it outside the field of academia itself. And maybe you could also extrapolate on why you left academia.
So there are a lot of research opportunities outside of academia for sure, depending on the field. Like even in the pharma companies, there's a lot of research going on. And I would say, look at, different pharmaceutical or biomedical companies who are more focused on research. Genentech has a lot of research focus. Novartis has a lot of research focus. So those would be, and even J&J, they also have a lot of research. So if you're still interested in doing R&D, I think that you could, be closer to not just academic, like pure science, theoretical-based research. There's a lot of opportunities in the industry. You just have to find the right company that does still invested in those kind of research to give you those opportunities. Yeah.
Hi. So a question I want to ask is, how do you deal with the company who has the same idea as you have, and then, yeah, that's the only question.
The thing is, idea is a very small part of what a company does. Think of a restaurant. I'm going to serve people and charge them money for it. But the way you execute it it's so different that you have millions of restaurants in the world. It's very much same with the technology. And there are different ways you can play it out, where if it's more consumer facing or if it's more of a commercial business, then it's the art of the execution. How do you talk to your customers? How do you face your customers? How is your product usage experience? Like all of that creates your differentiation. Whereas I think in your field or in more, scientific fields, there would be more of a race towards tangible things like patents and design and all of that, where there are a lot of NDAs and competitive clauses and guarding people, because it's the minds, it's the people that are so important that I see.
From a business perspective, I would give you 2 words: competitive advantage. What if you're going to go into the same field? What's your competitive advantage? Why should people do business with you versus the person next to you, versus that very similar business? So everyone is trying to think of that. What's it about the technology? What's it about their business that gives them that competitive advantage? It may be a patent. Because with a patent, then someone else may be doing something very similar, but you can prevent them from doing it because they don't have it patented. So think about that just from a purely business standpoint.
So I'll definitely add on to the competitive advantage. So part of figuring out your competitive advantage is also really understanding who your customer is and what they are looking for, right? And I think that's the hardest piece, even for us, right? We're still kind of trying to figure out what that right fit is. But I think, and the reason why I say that is because the more you know your customer and you're able to present a product that resonates with them, to the point where you can make your customer become your cheerleaders and champions, that's where you have a winning product, right? And a good example of a product that's like that is actually, I don't know how many of you have heard of the Chase Reserve card. Have anybody heard of the Chase Reserve? Yeah. So anyway, the Chase Reserve card is meant to compete with the Amex Platinum and the Citi Prestige card, where these are really elite cards that people are supposed to have. Amex, people always associate Amex with like, I'm rich, right? But when you have a Chase Reserve card, you're telling people, I'm interesting. And those are the people, the millennials apparently, are the ones who bought into this whole Chase Reserve card, bandwagon, so to speak, because they want to have the card that says, I'm interesting. And it resonates with who they are. And so basically when Chase launched the new Reserve card, they managed to meet their 1-year goal as far as new users in 2 weeks. So they were overwhelmed with the number of people who actually signed up for the card. So I think when you're able to create a product like that really resonates with the customers as far as what you're delivering to them, I think that's where you have a winning product.
Any more questions?
So it's multifaceted, but my name is Josh, and I'm a member of the Business and Entrepreneurship Club here, and I just wanted to send like an invite and allow you guys all to, give me your information or come up to the Veteran Resource Opportunity Center and give that to me at any point in time. Our president is Vivian Gonzalez, but then also like with these startups in an area so saturated like the Silicon Valley, like, do you go in with a mentality that, a potential acquisition or, absorption is going to occur, or, is like that brand equity or, the separation and like personal identification more important, or is that just another pivot that takes place throughout the business process?
I think it depends on where you're looking at it. Like I was telling you about our engineers, I'm sure they're more vested into the company as their baby than me, who sees it as an asset that I'll flip one day and I'll pay them. So I'm like the heartless one, and they're like, they love the product. So I'm sure there's a curve. And then you have my investors where they only see it as like a tangible asset that they will flip one day. So it depends on how independent you are as a company, what is your structure, and a lot of that is from day one of creating the company. The moment you get institutional funding, which is like Sandhill, venture capital, you don't get to control a lot of stuff anymore. You get money, it looks very nice, but you give a lot of ownership rights plus management rights of your company, where if you raise $5 million, you can't sell your company for $10 million. Even if that money is wonderful for you and you own 80% of your company, they're not going to let you sell that company unless you get an offer for $50 million. So with every step you take in more creating that institutional structure of that company, it becomes more difficult as you stage. But I think there is a large mindset in people, particularly because it's so condensed right now. People come here to get rich, and they see entrepreneurship as like a get-rich-quick roadmap. Which, given that 99% of the time startups fail, it's a horrible way to invest your time and money mathematically. but still, it's the nicer stories look really nice for people. So I think a lot of people are creating companies to resell one day, to get a couple of $1 million and all of that, which I have found to be the worst reason to start a company. It takes a lot of time, it takes everything out of you to build a successful company. If you want to earn a lot of money, learn a lot of coding skills, people are offering jobs for $250K, $300K per year. That's a safer route, I think. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I definitely resonate a lot with what Senna said. The more you go through that VC path, then you have less control, for sure. So really hard to say. So I think the first thing when you set out to start a business is to really kind of figure out how much control you want in the business, right? And then of course, when you take money from someone, who do you basically you're being sort of partner, business partner. So you want to be careful who you take that money from. Does this person understand your business, right? Do they resonate with what you want to do as far as value and so forth? So that those are very important questions, I think, to ask. I think that, it's really hard to say, like we have plans of what we want ideally would happen, but I think a lot of it is also luck and opportunity, right? And all you could do is be prepared when opportunity comes by, and that's where you see luck.
All right, so I have to jump in and cut us off, unfortunately. We've reached our 6:30 end time, but I want to thank everyone tonight. You guys have asked some amazing questions. Panelists, you've been awesome. Robert, you did an excellent job of moderating. Can we please have a round of applause for Senna Jordan, Robert Shoffner, Thank you so much. I might put them on the spot and ask them if they can stay maybe a couple